Welcome to Life Stories, where we share real-life experiences and powerful lessons that touch the heart. Today, we dive into a story of self-discovery, betrayal, and the courage to finally put yourself first. It's a tale about one person's journey of cutting ties with family after years of being taken for granted. Choosing personal freedom over toxic expectations. Sometimes, we learn the hardest lessons when we realize our worth doesn't depend on what we give to others. So sit back, relax, and let's begin today's story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. Thanksgiving. For most people, it's a time of family, tradition, and togetherness. A time when you gather around the table, share a meal, and give thanks for the blessings of the past year. But for me, this Thanksgiving was unlike any other. And it turned out to be a moment that would change everything. It was just a few days before the holiday when I got the call. I had finished work early, having spent the day repairing air conditioning units in the cold Seattle air. My shop was quiet, the neon buzzing faintly in the twilight as I locked up for the night. I was excited to finally have a break. I had everything in place, my crew was prepared, jobs were scheduled, and I had even picked out a bottle of wine to bring to dinner. I had it all figured out. I climbed into my truck, looking forward to the warmth of home. My phone rang, and seeing my mother's name on the screen made me smile. I thought she was calling to ask which pie I should bring, pecan or pumpkin. But when I answered, her voice didn't carry the usual warmth. There was a hesitation in her tone that sent a chill through me. Honey, I wanted to talk to you about Thanksgiving, she said, her voice unusually soft, almost apologetic. I braced myself. I could tell something wasn't right. I had been preparing for the usual pre-holiday call. But this felt different. We think it would be best if you skip dinner this year, she continued, her words a dagger to my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wait, what? Skip dinner? We always do Thanksgiving together. My voice rose in disbelief, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. There was a pause, and then my mother sighed, a sound that echoed with practiced care. It's just that this year, Serafina's boyfriend is bringing his parents, and we thought it might be better if it was just close family. Close family? I was family. Mom, I am close family, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But the hurt was already rising. She quickly backpedaled, trying to cover up the truth. Of course you are, sweetheart, but you know how these professional families can be. It's important for Serafina to make a good impression. I could feel the sting of her words. My job, my life, none of it was up to their standards. My career as an AC technician, something I had worked hard for, was somehow beneath them. I could feel my anger bubbling up, a mix of frustration and hurt. So what? Because I don't wear a suit and tie, I'm not good enough to sit at the table? I asked, my voice rising with the raw emotion that had been building inside me for years. Well, honey, it's just one dinner. We'll make it up to you. Maybe a family brunch next weekend, she offered, her tone shifting to that familiar, guilt-laden pitch that always made me feel small. I couldn't take it anymore. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I hung up the phone. Sitting there in the stillness of my truck, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had been helping Serafina, my sister, whom I loved, with her college tuition for years. I had paid for her textbooks, her rent, everything, and now, I wasn't even good enough to be in the same room as her boyfriend's parents? I sat there for a long moment, gripping the wheel, trying to steady myself. The tears welled up in my eyes. But I blinked them back. I was done. If they didn't want me at their table, they didn't deserve my help. It was then that my phone vibrated again. It was a text from my cousin. Genevieve, I need to tell you something. It's about Thanksgiving. I hesitated before opening the message, already knowing it wouldn't be good news. I overheard Mom and Serafina talking the other day. Serafina said she didn't want you there because she was afraid it would make her look bad in front of Dorian's parents. She said, and I quote, I don't want them to think we come from a working class background. I read the message twice, my stomach sinking lower and lower. My sister, the same one I had been supporting all these years, was ashamed of me. Ashamed of the work I did. Ashamed of the life I had built. I wanted to scream, but I just sat there, numb, my hands shaking as I held my phone. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier. The way she never invited me to her college events. The way she'd change the subject whenever her friends asked what I did for a living. The way she never even introduced me to her boyfriend, even though they had been together for almost a year. I had ignored it all, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. But this was undeniable. On Thanksgiving Day, for the first time in my life, I spent it alone. I tried to distract myself by driving around, stopping at a diner for coffee, and even calling a few friends. But nothing could dull the ache in my chest. I went on social media and saw the family photos. Serafina in a sleek dress, smiling next to her boyfriend Dorian and his parents. All polished and perfect. And there I was, nowhere to be found. That was when something inside me shifted. If I wasn't good enough to sit at their table, then my money wasn't good enough to pay for Serafina's tuition anymore. I had been the one holding everything together for her all these years. But no more. The decision had been made. I would stop being their silent provider. I would stop pretending that I could take their disrespect, their disdain. I was done. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. It wasn't relief. Not exactly. It was more like the heavy weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted from my chest. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't dreading the day. I wasn't dreading the phone calls, the expectations, or the constant strain of being the person who always gave and never received. I sat at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in my hand, and opened my laptop. I'd done this routine so many times over the years that it had become second nature. Logging into the university's payment portal was something I could do without thinking. The familiar login screen appeared, and I typed in Serafina's details, knowing the account better than I knew my own. The balance for the semester was $21,500, the same amount I had been paying for her education every term since she started law school. I stared at the number for a moment, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. The same number I had been responsible for years. The same amount that had caused me to sacrifice my own wants, my own needs, all for her future. But now, looking at it, I realized something. I wasn't going to pay it anymore. I had done enough. I had given enough. My cursor moved to the option to remove the payment method. A small pop-up appeared, asking if I was sure about the decision. Are you sure you want to remove this account as a payer? This action cannot be undone. I didn't hesitate. I clicked, yes. The second my laptop snapped shut, my phone buzzed on the table. My mother's name flashed across the screen. I sighed and let it ring. She called again, and again. By the fourth call, I sighed in exasperation and picked up the phone. I knew exactly what was coming. What are you doing? My mother's voice was sharp, like she had been arguing with someone before I even answered. Good morning to you too, Mom, I said, trying to sound calm despite the storm inside me. Don't play games with me, she snapped. Serafina just called, hysterical, saying you cut off her tuition payment. Tell me that's not true. Oh, it's true, I said flatly. There was a brief silence, and then I heard her sharp intake of breath. Ella, how could you be so cruel? Cruel? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's an interesting choice of words, considering she's the one who got me disinvited from Thanksgiving because she was embarrassed by me. She was just trying to make a good impression on Dorian's family. My mother argued, her voice shifting into the guilt-tripping mode she always used when she wanted something from me. You know how these things work. She's young. She doesn't think things through. She's 24, Mom, I corrected. She knows exactly what she's doing. There was a pause, and then the inevitable. You promised you'd support her through school. No, I corrected, my grip tightening around my mug. I promised to help my sister. Not someone who treats me like I'm disposable. My mother exhaled, frustrated. You're overreacting. Family makes sacrifices for each other. That's just what we do. I swallowed back a bitter laugh. Funny how family only applies when I'm the one giving. When it's my turn to expect a little basic respect, suddenly I'm asking for too much. She needs this, Ella. So did I said quietly. My mother fell silent. For once, she didn't have an immediate comeback. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken truth. I'm done, I said firmly. I've spent years paying for her education, covering every expense, making sure she never had to worry about a damn thing. And the one time I needed her to just acknowledge me, she chose to erase me instead. My mother let out a frustrated sigh. You're being so dramatic. I didn't respond. I had said what I needed to say. I think we're done here, I said, ignoring the sharp sting in my chest. I hung up the phone. And for a long moment, I just sat there, the weight of my decision sinking in. I felt a strange mixture of relief and regret. Relief for finally standing up for myself. And regret because, for so long, I had let my family take advantage of me. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I was done being the one who always gave. It was time for Serafina to learn how to stand on her own 2 feet. The phone calls from my family started flooding in almost immediately. My mother, then my father, then distant relatives and family friends. They all rallied behind Serafina, urging me to reconsider, telling me I was punishing my own blood. But none of them had defended me when I was left out of Thanksgiving. None of them had called to see if I was okay. No, they only cared when Serafina lost her safety net. But I wasn't going to let their guilt-tripping work on me this time. I wasn't going to cave. I had made my decision. And I was sticking to it. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And it felt damn good. The phone calls kept coming, one after another, each message more desperate than the last. My mother called again, this time practically begging me to reconsider. Ella, you can't just walk away from family like this. She pleaded. You promised you'd help her. I listened to the familiar guilt in her voice. A voice that had once always made me fold under pressure. But this time, something in me had shifted. I was no longer that person. The one who let her family's expectations weigh her down. I wasn't going to be the doormat anymore. Mom, I said, my voice steady but firm. I didn't walk away from family. I just stopped being the one who always gives. Serafina is an adult. She has to learn that life doesn't revolve around me picking up the pieces for her every time she falls. I could almost hear my mother's frustration on the other end of the line. You're being unreasonable. She's young. She's trying to build a future. She's 24, I reminded her. She should have figured it out by now. I've been paying for her education, her rent, her textbooks, all while she treated me like I was invisible. The least she could do was treat me like I matter. My mother didn't respond right away. And for a moment, the silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. This wasn't what she had expected. And it certainly wasn't what she wanted. But it was what I needed. I needed to stop being the person who gave without ever receiving. I needed to stand up for myself for once. Even if it meant disappointing my family. The calls didn't stop. My father called next, his voice laced with disappointment. Ella, this isn't like you. You've always been the one to help. The one to put family first. What happened to that? Dad, what happened to me being allowed to be more than just a provider? I replied, my voice no longer filled with guilt but with a quiet strength. I'm tired of being used. I'm tired of being the one who sacrifices everything while no one acknowledges me. I could hear him sigh heavily on the other end of the line. You've changed, Ella. No, I corrected him. I've finally stopped letting myself be taken for granted. There was a long pause. And then he said something I hadn't expected. I guess I always thought you'd just do what's expected. I didn't realize how much you were holding in. I didn't respond to that. I didn't need to. The truth had already been spoken. It wasn't just my parents who called. Though, other family members, people I barely even spoke to, reached out, too. They all rallied behind Serafina, bombarding me with messages of guilt. How could you do this to your own sister? She's your family. You're just being petty. But none of them had stood by me when Serafina excluded me from Thanksgiving. None of them had reached out when I was left to spend the holiday alone. The hypocrisy stung, but I didn't let it break me. The one person who didn't call was Serafina. I had expected that. After all, she was the one who had driven me to this point. She was the one who had made me feel less than. As though my hard work and sacrifices meant nothing. A few days passed in silence. And in that silence, I felt something that I hadn't felt in years, peace. It wasn't the peace of doing the right thing. It wasn't the peace of knowing I had made the right decision. It was the peace of no longer being burdened by other people's expectations. It was the freedom to live for myself. That is, until the inevitable happened. Serafina reached out. It was a voicemail, a shrill, panicked message from her. What the hell? My tuition payment got declined. Why aren't you picking up? You need to fix this. Right now. I stared at my phone. The message burning through my screen. She hadn't even bothered to apologize for how she treated me. She hadn't even taken a moment to acknowledge the hurt she had caused. No, she just wanted her money. I played the message over and over again, each time growing angrier, and then it hit me. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I was angry at myself, for allowing this to go on for so long. For giving her everything, only to be discarded when it was inconvenient for her. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I wasn't playing the role they expected me to play. I wasn't the silent provider. The one who sacrificed her own needs for the sake of others. I was free, and that freedom felt more powerful than any guilt they could try to impose on me. Serafina had lost more than just her tuition. She had lost the person who had always been there for her. And I wasn't going to be the one to pick up the pieces this time. I had finally learned that sometimes, walking away from those who take you for granted isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And it was a lesson I was never going to forget. As the days went by, I found myself settling into a new rhythm. It wasn't always easy, and at times, the weight of my family's disappointment felt like a constant pressure on my chest. But with each passing day, I began to realize something. I had been living for everyone else for far too long. It was time to live for me. I focused on my business, poured my energy into growing my HVAC company, and started investing in myself, something I had never done before. The freedom I felt was unlike anything I had experienced. For once, I wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations. I wasn't weighed down by guilt. I was free to make my own choices, live my own life, and create my own future. Then one day, I received a message from my cousin Genevieve. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing, she said softly. I could hear the concern in her voice. She told me that Serafina had moved back home, that my parents were struggling financially, but they were still blaming me for everything. I hope you know you did the right thing, Genevieve added. And she was right. I did the right thing. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the silent giver. I wasn't the one who always sacrificed my peace for the comfort of others. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that family should never come at the cost of your self-worth. No one should make you feel like you're only valuable when you're giving something. Love shouldn't be conditional, and neither should respect. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for following my story. If this resonated with you, or if you've ever been in a similar situation, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life stories. We've got many more to share, and you don't want to miss them. See you next time.